So today we will be discussing networking, the second part. So today we will be discussing TCP IP model, which is almost similar to OSI model. Then we will be discussing the TCP connection, which is connection oriented protocol. This protocol is connection oriented. It happens after establishing a successful connection. And then we will be learning about UDP. It is a connectionless protocol. Then we will be learning about TCP and UT datagrams, and followed by this we will be learning IP, IPv4, IPv6. Then we will be learning about ports, MAC addresses, DNS resolution, ARP table, types of casting, classful and classless IP addressing, firewalls and encryption techniques. Okay, so let's begin with the TCP IP model. So in OSI model we have seen that you learnt about physical data link layer, network layer, transport layer, session, presentation and application layer. So in TCP IP model what happens is like a couple of layers are combined together. So in TCP IP model physical and data link layer are combined, and they combine to form host to network layer. Network layer and transport layers are independent, and then again session, presentation and application, these layers are combined together to form a simple layer or a single layer, that is application layer. So the functions of these layers are exactly same as it was in OSI model. So in physical layer we deal with physical devices like cables, wires. Cables can be like RJ45 and RJ42 and other cables. In data link layer we deal with physical addresses like MAC address and other devices. In network layer we talk about IP address, where like ARP, RARP, that is address resolution protocol, and reverse address resolution protocol, these all things happen. So then in transport layer we talk about TCP and UDP, where the actual data transfer happens. And the session layer is like creating and managing a session. In presentation layer we deal with like how we share data, like encryption and like customizing the data so that we can transfer the data easily. And in application layer we deal with the applications we usually interact with. So this is very simple, and this is exactly as same as like the OSI model. Okay, so if anyone in any doubt they can ask me. Okay, so should I move, because this topic was almost same like OSI model? Am I audible? Hello everyone.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so then we will talking about the TCP. What TCP is? It is a connection oriented protocol. So what a connection oriented protocol means? So a connection oriented protocol is a protocol where a secure connection is established before send. Yes, hello. Please mute your mic. Hello. Okay, so TCP is a connection oriented protocol. It stands for transmission control protocol. The full form for TCP is transmission control protocol. So in this protocol a secure connection is established, like whenever a client and a server, or a client or a receiver, they both wants to share data, a secure connection is established. So when we establish a secure connection we get to know whether the data has been delivered or not. Okay, so if any data is not delivered and the packet is dropped, we get to know that this packet has been dropped, and the receiver can ask that packet again from the client. Because the session has been established, there is a secure connection between those two nodes. So when we establish a connection, it happens using a process which is called three-way handshake. So what happens in a three-way handshake is the sender or the client who wants to initiate a connection sends a SYN packet or the SYN flag. Then the receiver acknowledges that SYN flag and sends a SYN ACK flag, and again the sender who initiated the connection will send an acknowledgement flag. So how this happens? You see this flag in TCP datagram, there is a field called flags. So there are 6 flags. Those flags are urgent, acknowledge, push, SYN, let's say synchronize, reset and fin. So all these flags are used for a specific purpose. So when a client or a single node that wants to initiate a connection to the other node, he sends a SYN packet. How a SYN packet is sent? SYN is a flag. Either it can be set to 0 or it can be set to 1. So if a client wants to initiate a connection to other receiver end or the other node, it sends a packet which has a flag called SYN which is set to 1. Then again, when the receiver receives this packet, he sees that the flag SYN flag is set to 1, so he knows that the client wants to initiate a connection. So what he will do is he will leave the SYN packet to 1, and then he will make the acknowledgement packet 1 and sends the same packet again. So what happens is, now when the client receives the same packet, it sees that it has SYN and ACK, those flags are set to 1, so it knows that the receiver received the packet and sends the acknowledgement. Then again, the client or the machine which wanted to initiate the connection, what it will do, it will again reset the SYN flag to 0 and make the acknowledgement flag 1, and it will again send that packet back to the server or the back to the second node from where which it wanted to receive something, the receiver end. Okay, so in this way this three-way handshake happens, and when these three packets are transferred, the SYN flag, the SYN ACK flag and the ACK flag, the transmission starts, the secure connection is established, and then we can initiate the transmission of data. So when the data transmission is successful, like when we wanted to send some data and we send the data, then what happens is, after successful data transmission, we need to close the connection. We cannot leave any connection open, it can be misused. So how this connection is closed? So there is a FIN flag. FIN flag is used to close the connection. Then when the data transmission is successful, the other node will send a FIN flag, then again the first node will send an acknowledgement flag, then again the second node will send a FIN flag, then the first node will send an acknowledgement flag, and after these 4 handshakes the connection is closed. So this is all about the TCP protocol, how it works. Okay, now let's come to TCP datagram. So a data packet, like how a data is shared. So data is shared in this way. This small image you are seeing is exact data packet. This information is carried out in a TCP datagram. Okay, so the source port contains the source port, the port number which the source using to send some data or the initiating a connection. So let's suppose if I want to visit a website, so my source port will be 80, because I will be receiving or sending any request through source port 80. Let's suppose the destination port may be something. So what is a port? A port is a 16-bit number. You can see this whole field from here to here is 32-bit. So we know that one source port is 16-bit and destination port is 16-bit. So how much information we can gather in a 16-bit number? 2 to the power 16, obviously. So there are total number of 2 to the power 16 ports available to use, that is 65,535. Port 0 is not used, that's why we have 65,535. The destination port is filled. Then we have a sequence number. Sequence number is used to show that this is the sequence of the packet. Like if we want to send a audio file.
Yeah.
Yes.
Harshit bhaiya,
Yes.
we are getting a bit of a static in the group. Everybody is saying that your voice is not clear. So can you just make a bit of an adjustment?
Okay, hold on. Just a second. Okay, is the voice clear now?
Yeah, comparatively, yes.
Is it better now?
Yes. Please continue, sir.
Okay, so let's start. So what I was saying, was I audible all the time? Like what I have discussed, have everyone got this, or should I start again?
It was broken for some. It was broken for some time, but it's okay.
Okay.
Okay, just wind up just 1 or 2 steps.
Okay, so let's start the TCP datagram again. Okay, so this small image you are seeing is the exact TCP datagram, that is TCP data packet, how a data packet looks. So the total length of this data packet is 32 bits. So we get to know that, okay, so if the whole length is 32 bits and it is divided in two parts, the first layer is divided in two parts, the source port and the destination port. So the source port is 16 bits and the destination port is 16 bits. Okay, so in 16 bits, how much information we can gather in binary? If in binary we have 16 bits, so in decimal we can store 2 to the power 16 bits of information, that is 65,535. So we have total 65,535 ports. So we have one port which is reserved for future users, that is 0 port is not used. Okay, so the source port is the port number the node 1 on the or the source device is using, the client device is using to initiate a connection. The destination port is where this data packet will be delivered to the destination, the node. And the sequence number, the second layer in this datagram, that is sequence number, it is used to track the data packet sequence. Okay, let's suppose if we are sharing an audio file. Okay, so the limit is 32 bits. The maximum data you can send in a data packet is 32 bits. So if you are sending a 5 megabytes of audio file, you cannot like accumulate everything in a single data packet. It is like, then it is broken into parts, fragments, and then assembled in different data packets. So to track those data packets, these sequence numbers are used, and the acknowledgement number is used just to acknowledge that the packet has been received or packet has been dropped. If the packet is dropped, the receiver end will send this acknowledgement number, like this packet has been dropped, send the packet again. So there are different flags, like this flag I talked about. These flags, there are 6 different types of flags, that is urgent, acknowledge, push, synchronize, reset, and fin. So urge flag, that is urgent flag, it is used to show that this data packet is urgent, it needs to be delivered as soon as the client port or the receiver end receives it. Acknowledgement port is just to acknowledge the request, like when we want to initiate a connection, acknowledge port is used to give an acknowledgement that yes, we have received your request to initiate a connection. Push, so push is the flag which is used to push a data packet, like if the data packet is in a sequence number and it, like we want to deliver it before the some other packet, so we can say this push flag is set to 1. Syn flag is used to synchronize, to initiate a connection. Reset flag is used to reset the connection, and fin flag finally is used to terminate the connection. So the checksum field, what is a checksum field? Checksum field is the most important field in any data packet. So okay, so what checksum field does is, checksum field is used to get the data integrity. What is data integrity? Like let's suppose I am sending some data to someone else, like I am sending a letter or mail or a text message to someone else. So the integrity is what I am sending is exactly that is received on the other node. It is not hampered, it is not tempered, it is not changed in any way. So how checksum field is calculated? There is a TTL field, that is time to live field. So time to live field, TTL field, is a field which reduces after every hop. So like a TTL, let's suppose that if a TTL field is set to 64 or 128, then it is said that this data packet will go to 64 different hops, and even if after 64 or a limited number of hops it does not get to its destination, that packet will be dropped. So it is used because let's suppose if I am sending a data to someone else, like if I want to upload a photo to facebook.com, and by any chance let's suppose there comes a possibility where like my data packet like goes in a loop where it just like start transferring from one hop to other, then other to the first one to the second one. So what it will create, it will create additional traffic. It will not do anything but just it will create an additional traffic. So to reduce these kind of possibilities, TTL field is used. So TTL field is the maximum number of hops a packet can go. So if a packet is set to 64 and it set to 64 TTL fields, and if the packet is in a loop, so it will just travel 64 different hops and then the packet will be dropped. So checksum field is calculated, it's a mathematical calculation. It is calculated based on these different scenarios, like we use TTL fields and other mathematical calculations So how the integrity is checked? So let's suppose there are two routers. Okay, I am sending data from my device to another device, and my router calculated a checksum with my original data, and it gets like a number 128. The checksum is 128. Okay, so let's suppose someone interrupted the data packet, someone changed something in the data packet, and the data packet is received at the other node. So router will, what the router will do, the other hop will do, it will again calculate a checksum for the received data. If it comes 128, well enough, the data will be sent to the client or the receiver. And if the packet at the checksum fields come anything other than 126 128, then the packet will be dropped. It will be understood that the packet has been hampered in any way. So this is how checksum field is used, and like we see how checksum field is really important in terms of data integrity. And there again few more fields like urgent pointers, in which we can just give what is the urgent data packets which we need to send. Then there is padding. Padding is just used to make sure that the options and the total padding comprises of 32 bits, and this is the actual data which we want to send. So after all of this, now let's move to our like another slide, that is UDP. So what UDP is? UDP is simply user datagram protocol. It is connectionless. It is completely connectionless. There is no connection established, and we just keep on sending data to the receiver. Sorry. So in this protocol there is no connection established. So what we understand from a TCP and a UDP connection? So TCP connection is comparatively slow. Why comparatively slow? Because in TCP connection, first of all, we need to initiate connection. We need 3 different data packets just to initiate connection. We need 4 different data packets to terminate a connection. In between, there are times when this connection is checked. The client will send the same SYN packet to the receiver just to make sure that the connection is established. So in TCP, a lot more traffic is generated. That is useless. We cannot say useless, but it is not any use of like our users. So in UDP, what UDP is? UDP is just used to share data. We do not initiate any connection, we do not terminate any connection. So mostly UDP is used in any like web streaming services. Let's suppose you are streaming Netflix. So if you are watching a video at 30 frames per second, so even if like you miss a single frame, the video quality will not be hampered anyway, because if you miss one frame out of 30 frames, the video will still run smoothly. So in UDP connections, since there is no connection established, we don't get to know what parts or what data packets has been lost. So UDP is not that secure, but it is used in web streaming services because there we need more accuracy than privacy. So just we keep on sending data, and the receiver end receives the data. It may receive all the data, it may not receive all the data, but we use UDP only where this does not matter anyways. So now let's come to UDP datagram. UDP datagram is really simple. The only important part is the length, the checksum, the source port, and the destination port. And we all know what these all things are: source port, destination ports, length, and checksum. So now let's come to IP addresses. So there are 2 types of IP addresses, IPv4 and IPv6. We will discuss both separately. So what is an IP address? IP address is internet protocol address, but any device that is connected to internet have a separate IP address, has a different and unique IP address. So why we need a different IP address? So IP address is used just to identify any device that is connected to internet. So in your phone, in your PC, you all have a separate IP address now because you all are connected to internet. If you are connected to a router, you will be having a different IP address. If you are connected to Jio SIM card or Airtel SIM card, your DHCP server will be different and you will have a different IP address. So there are 2 types of IP addresses, private and public. Hello, can you mute? Hello. Okay, so there are two types of IP addresses. The IP address is private and public. So why we need this type of concept of private and public IP address? So like IP address is 32-bit long. You can see in the end like it is 128 dots. That's okay. Wait. So you can see it is 128.11.3.31. So it is there's 1 to 8. So the every field which are we using is can vary from 0 to 225. So to make this is in decimal, so if this is in decimal, so to write 0 to 225 in binary we need 8 bits. So the total length of an IP address is 8 bits in 4 different separated by a dot, that is 8 into 4 32 bits. So an IP address is a 32-bit long address which has 4 octets. So the total possibility of the IP address is 2 to the power 32, which is around 4 billion, I guess, which is around 4.5 billion possibilities. But we have a population of over 8 billion and connected devices to the internet, that is more than 25 billions. So there are limitations. So to like cover up those limitations, there is a concept we developed, not we, like IEA and they developed, that is private and public address. So in private and public address, what we try to do is, if there is an organization of so they get a different IP address and they can get their host machines within their network, so that they all can connect to the internet using the same IP address. So if you have a router and you have 5 devices connected to internet, if you go and check your IP address using ifconfig command, you will see a different IP address starting from 192.168. something. But if you go to any other website on internet and check your IP address, you all will get a same IP address. That same IP address is the public IP of the router, and that address which you are seeing using ifconfig command, that is a private IP address. So anyone who is connecting to internet needs a public IP address to interact with the internet. So that's why we cannot give a separate public IP address to everyone, because there are limitations. So what we do is we are giving a public IP address to the router, and everyone connected to that router, everyone in that network can interact with the world, interact with the internet and cloud using the same public IP address. Okay, you all have different IP address within your network, but when you are interacting with internet, the router will use its public IP address and get all the requests and responses on behalf of the clients, on behalf of the devices connected to the router. Okay, so still we cannot fulfill all the requirements using IPv4. So there is a concept called IPv6. So in IPv6 what we do is we use hexadecimal numbers. So it is a 128-bit long address. So how is this 128-bit long address? It is 8 octets, like it is separated by periods, and it is like 8. So every bit, like every 2001 colon 0000 colon 9T38, all are of 16 bits. So if anyone of you have ever learned about binary numbers, hexadecimal numbers, you will get to know that this number can be shown using 16 bits. So every bit like 1, 0, 0 and 2 can be shown by a 16-bit binary number. 9D38 can be shown by a 16-bit binary number, because in hexadecimal every bit is shown by 4, every number is shown by 4 bits. 9 can be shown by 4 bits, D can be shown by 4 bits, 3 and 8, these all can be shown by 4 bits. So a single number that is between two periods consists of 16 bits, and there are 8 different periods. So we get a 128-bit long address, and there are like immense possibilities. We have like over trillions and trillions of IP address which are possible, because we get 2 to the power 128 different IP addresses. Clear enough? Okay, so now we will coming to ports and addresses. So what is a port? So we just discussed about ports. कि port is a single 16 bit integer number, 16-bit number, which is used to interact with other services. So every port is used for different services. So we can refer it as a logical channel through which data can be sent or received to an application. So every different services is running on a different port. If you are sharing some data, FTP, that is running on different port. If you are visiting websites that is not secure like HTTP websites, it runs on port 80. If you are visiting HTTPS websites, it runs on different port, that is port 443. So all different services run on different ports. So the port is used because we don't want to interrupt any other service with any other services. So what we have done is we have given different port numbers to different services, so everything should be uninterrupted. If we are sending mails, so SMTP server for sending mails runs on a different port. Okay, so now comes to like MAC address. So what is the MAC address? MAC address stands for like media access control address, and it is the physical address of any device which can connect to internet. It has a MAC address. So MAC address is given by the manufacturer. Any manufacturing company which creates a device which can interact with the internet, which can connect to internet, has a separate MAC address. So MAC address is a 48-bit address. How 48-bit address? So this is the hexadecimal numbers. These are hexadecimal numbers. These D685 all are hexadecimal numbers. So we can denote 5 by 4 bits, 8 by 4 bits, 6 by 4 bits, D by 4 bits, and every other thing by 4 bits. So if we calculate, we get 48 bits. So this is the MAC address. You can see 586D, 8F, CAA, 7CB, with that I have written here. So this is the MAC address. MAC address is the physical address which is used by an ARP or the router just to map that this IP address is connected to this MAC address. We will be discussing that later.
So yeah,
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Rajat sir.
Yes.
We have a question whether we can change our MAC address or not.
Yes, it is possible to change our MAC address, but then there is thing like you cannot change it permanent. Like you can use some custom tools to fake your MAC address. There are like a tool called MAC Changer in Kali Linux which you can use. You can use this tool in Linux, but in Ubuntu and other stuffs, but you need to install that. In Kali it is pre-installed. You can use MAC Changer and you can change your MAC address. Everything can be spoofed. Everything on the internet can be spoofed. Okay, can we move further, or is there any other question?
No, we don't have any other questions as of now. We can obviously
Okay.
proceed.
Okay, so now let's come to DNS resolution. So everyone, whenever you go to any browser and you type in facebook.com or google.com, so what happens? There is a term called DNS resolution that happens for the first. Whenever you go and type any website, anything in the search bar, the DNS resolution takes place. So what is a DNS? DNS is a domain name server. So earlier when we had like telephones, so what we had a phone book directory where every phone number was mapped with a name. So DNS is the same thing. Every website on the internet is mapped with a different IP address in the DNS. So if I ask you, you go and type in 34.134.68.59. So like, can you remember these different 100 of these different numbers to open a website? Like if you go in your browser and you type in the IP address of google.com, you will ultimately open google.com, but it is hard to remember numbers. But it is easy to remember Google, Facebook, because these are words which we usually interact with. So remembering words is easier than remembering numbers. So that's why DNS resolution comes in place. So when you enter facebook.com, what happens is the request goes to the resolver. The resolver can be anything. The resolver can be your local resolve data DNS resolver. So if you have already visited that website previously, what happens is the DNS resolver keeps the cache file for that website. Okay, this website has this IP address. Okay, so it will directly give you the IP address and you can directly connect to the server. But in case you are visiting a website for the first time, so what happens is see in this image, the right bottom image. So let's suppose you type in example.com, so the request goes to DNS resolver. The browser asks the DNS resolver, do we have an IP address for example.com? Let's suppose you have already visited that website, so DNS resolver may have a cache value for that website, so it will return that website and you can directly interact with the server and like you can open that website. In case you don't have visited that website before, what happens, this DNS resolver will go to the root server. It will ask ki the browser wants to open google.com, so do we have an IP address for google.com? Root server will say okay. So there are 13 different root servers. So root server will say okay, go to TLD servers. TLD server, what are TLD servers? Like this is .net, .com, .se. These are TLD servers. TLD stands for top level domain. So TLD is .net, .com, .se, .in. So TLD stores all the data for very important and largely used TLDs. TLD is top level domain like .net, .com, .edu, .gov, .in. These data are stored in TLD. So it will go to TLD. TLD will say okay, so I have all the things for .com, you want google.com. Then this will send the request, okay, DNS resolver, you go to this google.com and you will get your IP address. Then it goes to ANS. ANS is authoritative name server. So now it will go to google.com and then it will check, okay, so google.com have 4 different IP addresses. So what IP address will it return? It will return that IP address that is nearest, that will take the least time to fetch. Okay, so you will be like you will be given an IP address which will take least amount of time to reach the server. The request will take least amount of time to reach the server, and when you get the IP address, you can easily open that website from the server. So is this clear? Is this part clear, like DNS resolution part? Hello everyone, is this part clear?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, so let's move to the next part, that is ARP and casting. So what is ARP? ARP stands for Address Resolution Protocol. So let's think of example. Okay, so you are connected, you and there are 4 of other friends, your friends, you all are sitting in a single room, you all have a router and you all are connected to the same router. So let's suppose you request for a data, you want to open google.com, your friend wants to open Facebook, your other friend want to open something else. All of your 5 friends wants to open something else. But we know ki the router will ask for all the responses on its behalf. Okay, so the internet or the server, the different servers, they will see that the router is asking for 5 different websites. Router wants to visit 5 different websites. The internet does not know that there are 5 different devices connected to the router. Internet just knows that the router is requesting for 5 different websites. So the internet will return, like different servers will return different responses with respect to different websites that has been requested. So now what happens is the router needs to forward the exact data packets to like exactly the same client which requested the same thing. Let's suppose you requested for google.com and you don't want कि facebook.com तेरे में open हो जाए. You want, if you are requesting for google.com should open. There are 5 different friends and they are all are browsing different things. So have you ever felt this कि if someone else is requesting for something else and you get a response for their request? No, this does not happen. So these things are maintained by ARP. So in ARP, all the IP address is mapped with the physical address, that is MAC address. So let's suppose I have a MAC address XYZ and I have a different IP address called A. So A is mapped to XYZ. In the same case, different MAC address is mapped to different IP address in other cases. So the router knows that this IP address which is mapped to this MAC address wanted google.com. So when it gets the response for google.com, it forwards only those packets to that IP address which is connected to that MAC address. Is that clear? If it is clear, then I will move to next part because this is important.
Yes, it is clear.
Okay, so now let's move to casting. So what is casting? Casting means transferring some data packets over a network from a source to destination over any communication channel. Okay, so now let's understand this using an example. Every one of you are on Telegram. So what is unicast? If you are chatting with a person personally, that is unicast. If you are in a group, that is multicast, and if you are in a channel, that is broadcast. Okay, let's understand this separately. So in unicast, what happens is there is a single sender, a single receiver. In a one-to-one communication, in one-to-one chat, what you do is you send some message, your friend sends some message. This is unicast. In multicast, there are multiple senders and multiple receivers. So let's think of a group where like everyone is texting. Everyone can send message, everyone can receive message. Multiple users can send and multiple receivers can receive. So this is multicast. And in broadcast, there is one sender who is sending message to all the receiving nodes. So this is broadcast. As simple as that. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now let's
Harshad Bhaiya, we have a question.
Yes.
What if multiple users use same website? Does ARP does something like caching? Like
okay, so yes, ARP does not do
question,
ARP. Okay, can you repeat the exact question again? Hello.
the exact question as per words is, what if multiple users
Mm-hmm.
use same website? Does ARP does something like caching?
Okay, so ARP does caching. ARP is just like a table which is in the router. If you are talking about caching, yes, if you have a proxy server or any server installed with between you and the internet, that server will do the caching, not the ARP. So how that proxy server works? Proxy server is like, let's suppose there is 5 different clients who are like trying to interact with the internet, and there is a proxy server installed between those 5 clients and the internet. So when those 5 clients request for something from the internet, the proxy server will halt the connection. It will request everything on its behalf and then sends everything to everyone using the same thing. But the important part with the proxy server is that if the same thing is visited and requested again and again, it stores the cache, not the all cache but the data which is being repeatedly requested. So ARP does not cache anything. ARP cache its own data. ARP caches IP addresses and MAC addresses mapping. Like if you have you ever felt that like in a router, if you connect daily and you are getting 192.168.1.16, you will get the same IP address every day until and unless you switch off the router. So ARP's database is cached, but the actual pages what we visit is not cached in ARP. If we have a proxy server installed, and then everything is cached. Not everything, the things we request frequently will be stored as a cache. Okay, so am I clear with my answer? Whoever asked this question, are you good enough with the answer? Hello.
Yes, your question has been answered, but we have another question.
Okay, so what is the question?
That how a user may change his location basically, but I guess that's out of bounds right now.
Okay, that's okay. So there are two different things for. Okay, Devjit, can you please mute? Okay, so whoever asked this question, okay, so location can be based out of two things. The one thing is IP address, and the other thing is your GPS system, that your GPS module. There are two different locations. The location which GPS module shows is true, like that cannot be faked. Yeah, that can be faked, but the like GPS module cannot be turned off. You cannot turn off that GPS module. If it's in your device, you can just turn off for a particular app, but if someone wants to use that, they can use that. There are other thing for like tracing and location, that is IP address. So both the things can be faked. IP address can be spoofed, your DNS server can be spoofed, and then again you can change your and you can fake your device location based out of your GPS module as well. How we can do that, that can be discussed later. Okay, if you can ask this question in the group, I will answer there, because this is not interactive, because if you cannot interact, this is little hard to make you understand. So whoever asked this question, can you please ask this question in the group again, so I can make you understand better, or you can personally text me as well.
Uh, that question was in the group only. I guess we can move on.
Okay, so now let's come to classful IP addressing. So there are two types of IP addressing. The first one is classful IP addressing, and the second one is classless. So in classful IP addressing, we have all the IP addresses, like all the possible IP addresses has been divided in 5 subclasses: class A, class B, class C, class D, and class E. Okay, so in class A, the first 8 bits, that is network ID, and the first 8 bits is network ID, and the rest 24 bits are host ID. In class B, first 16 bits are network ID, and the rest 16 bits are host ID. Similarly, in class C, first 16 bits, first 24 bits are network ID, and the last 8 bits are host ID. So why we need this network ID and the host ID? So a network ID and host ID is just to identify any network. Okay, let's suppose of a situation where there is an organization called google.com. Okay, it has, let's suppose, 5 lakh employees. Okay, so if Google is given an IP address from class A, it can have 2 to the power 24 hosts. Okay, are you getting my point? Like there are 8 bits of network ID and 24 bits of host ID. So total possibility of network ID is 2 to the power 8. That is 256. We can have 256 network IDs, and then we can have 2 to the power 24 host IDs. So let's suppose there is an organization which has over 1 million of people working under them. So they can get a network ID from class A because that has a large number of hosts. The possible hosts are 2 to the power 24. In for mid organization which has medium number of people in their organization, they can get class B IP address, and it has 2 to the power 16 hosts and 2 to the power 16 network IDs. And similarly in class C is generally used for small networks. So a router we usually use at home, we get a class C IP address. We get an IP address which starts with 192.168. So that is the class C network ID, because the number of hosts connected to the router is very less. That's why we use a class C IP address for home purpose. So there are different possibilities. So in class A IP address, which starts from 1.0.0.0 and it goes until 126 dot something. In class B, it goes from 128 to 191. In class C, it goes from 192.0.0.x to 223. And class D is reserved for multicast, and class E is reserved for future uses. It is not used now, it is used for just experimental and research purposes. That's it. So I guess this part will not be clear. Okay, let me tell you once again. Okay, so there is an organization which has a very huge number of employees working under them. So as I already told you, when we are interacting with the internet, we need to have a public IP address. So everyone in the organization needs to interact with the internet with the same public IP address. So a big organization is given a class A IP address because it has a large number of hosts. It can get hosts up to 2 to the power 24 different hosts. So for a big organization we use class A IP address, but for class C IP address we use 2 to the power 24 network IDs. Like we can, let's suppose if we consider all the routers in class C, we can have 2 to the power 24 different routers and 2 to the power 8 different hosts in each router. So that's why we use class C in a router, because we don't get more than 10, 15 or even 100 different users in a network, in our home networks or other router networks. That's why we use class C, because it has a large number of network IDs and a small number, that is 2 to the power 8 hosts. So classful IP addressing is used for these purposes, so that we can give the exact amount and the a good amount of IP address and the host IDs to an organization efficiently. Okay, the same thing is classless IP addressing. In classless IP addressing, the same thing is done, but we only deal with class A, class B and class C. So it is done using network address and mask. So we all know what a network address is. Network address is the same thing, the net ID. So there is a new thing, that is mask. What is a mask? So mask is a 32-bit binary number that gives the network address. So how this is done? Let's look at this block 10.0.0.0.8. Sorry, 0.0/8. So what this /8 indicates? This /8 indicates that the first 8 bits are set to 0 and the rest 24 bits of the 32-bit number is set to 1. So we can have a possible number of IP addresses which start from 10.0.0.0 and it will go until all the rest 24 bits can be set to 1. Okay, little confusing. This is little confusing. Okay, so let's think of an example. 192.168.1.0/24. Get this thing in mind. 192.168.1.0/24. So what this /24 denotes that the first 24 bits has been set to 0. So what we only have the last 8 bits which can be set to 1. So if we have only 8 bits which can be used, what are the possible number of hosts we can have? We can have 2 to the power 8 hosts, that is 256. So after this we see 192.168.1.0 can vary from 192.168.1.0 to 192.168.1.256. Okay, similarly if this is 10.0.0.1, it can vary from, leaving the first 8 bits, it can vary from 2 to the power 24 different hosts. Got my point? Okay, if anyone have any doubt they can ask me, because this is little confusing, the mask part.
Why we actually use this mask?
Yes, hello, yes, hello.
My point is why we actually use mask.
Okay, so we generally use mask just to show how many hosts are available within a network. Okay, so if you are given a network ID that is 10.0.0.0, it can be shown in two ways. Okay, the first way is using classful IP addressing, that is shown this is the network ID and this is the host ID, and you can then calculate within these network IDs these hosts are available, right? And in masks we use a slash to denote these things. Okay, Okay, do we have anything like a paint or something where I can show something? Okay, my do Microsoft Teams have any like notepad or anything where I can draw something? Can you mute? Okay, if you don't want to say something, can you please mute? Okay, so okay, let's try to understand this point again. Okay, let's suppose you are given an IP address, that is, look at this block where my mouse is 192.168.0.0/16. So this /16 means we have first 16 bits set to 0. That means we cannot change the first 16 bits. So if we are looking for any hosts, we will not touch 192.168, because 192.168 comes under the first 16 bits. Okay, so what we can change is .0.0, the last 16 bits that has been set to 0. We only can change that. Okay, so how many hosts we can have? 2 to the power 16. So we can have total number of hosts starting from 192.168.0.0 to .255.255. This is this slash that denotes. Okay, let's look at the some other example, that is 169.254.0.0/16. So this 16 denotes that first 16 bits of this IP address has been set to 0. We are not going to change that. So how many hosts we can have? We can have the last 16 bits as host. So last 16 bits, that means this 0 and this 0, because the first 16 bits comprises of the first two octets. So we can have 65,536 different hosts starting from 169.254.0.0 to .255.255. In the same way, if we look at 10.0.0.0/8, it shows that the first 8 bits will be untouched, is not the net host ID. The first 8 bits are network ID, so the rest 24 bits are the host ID. So we will only be touching 0, 0 and 0, and we have like 2 to the power 24 different hosts. So the both are the same thing. The only different method is that is we using classful and the classless. Classless means we do not give a different class, this hosts come under this host come under this. In classful IP addressing, we have a separately, we are telling the network ID is 8 bits, the host ID is 24 bits. In class B, the network ID is 16 bits, the host ID is 16 bits. But in classless IP address, we can use it /8/line/10/11/anything. But in classful, it is /8/16/24/32. Okay, now can you understand? In classful, we have a limitation. We only use /8/16/24. But in classless, we can use anything, like we are using /12 here, we can use /14. So /12 means we will not be touching the first 12 bits. If we write this IP address in binary, we are not going to change the first 12 bits. The rest 20 bits are our hosts. Am I clear now? I think now you have got the point, the difference between classful
Yes,
and
sir.
classless IP addressing. In classful, we use 8
Yes,
bits
sir.
of network ID, 16 bits and 24 bits. But in classless, we can use any bit of network ID and any bit of host IDs. And when you write this IP address in binary, you can clearly see, if you write 172.16.10. anything in binary, we will get a 32 bit number. So if it is /12, we will leave the first 12 bits as host IDs, and the rest 20 bits that is left will be our host ID. The first 12 bits will be the network ID, and the rest 20 bits will be the host IDs. Now I think I am clear. Yes. Okay, now come to firewall. Like, do you have any questions now? Anyone? Okay, Devyans is saying there is a whiteboard in Microsoft Teams, but I don't find the whiteboard. Like when I started sharing screen, it showed
Yeah,
only one option.
nahi, when you for the more added apps under the file tab, you can, find an app search whiteboard more.
Okay, so where I can find the app? Tell me more.
Just, switch to Microsoft Teams,
Yeah, I am. I have switched to Microsoft Teams.
and yeah, there on the left-hand panel side, can you see the three dots?
Yes,
Yeah, click on that
yes.
and type whiteboard.
Freehand by Envision.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Okay,
it.
okay. So I need to separately install these things. Okay.
Yeah, you have to add it to the team.
Okay, actually I am not hosting this meeting. So if when I am installing this, this is going into my account and not coming to this session. I don't know why.
Uh, I guess that then the organizer has to do that, I
Yes, yes,
guess.
yes, yes. Okay, so let's leave this for today. We will do it from the next session. And for any doubts, we can like discuss the same thing again in the next session. Don't worry. Okay, so now let's come to firewall. So what a firewall is? A firewall is an interface between an organization and the internet. Okay, so what a firewall does is firewall is installed to prevent the organization so that not everyone can interact with the devices, with the clients, the machines, the servers which are inside the firewall, which are inside the organization. So it is designed to forward some packets and filter some different other packets. So let's suppose I am working in an organization. Let's suppose I am working in Google or Microsoft. So if I am inside their organization, there is a firewall set above everything. Above everything means above all devices, above all routers, above all the connections, above all networking devices. There is a firewall that has been set up. So why that firewall has been set up? So that not everyone can send anything to the organization. Let's suppose I am sitting inside an organization. I am using my system, I am using my laptop, and there is one of my friend who wants to send a malware to my system. So if he successfully sends the malware to my system and I am connected to the organization's network, everyone in the network will be hampered. Everyone will be, they can be infected by that malware. They may be infected. So a firewall is installed so that what packets comes in and what packets goes out can be monitored actively. So by monitoring we means we just keep a keen look what packets are incoming and what packets are going. In certain organizations there are certain things are blocked. Like let's suppose if you are working in educational like companies or any other companies, they may block YouTube, or they may block, yeah, using Twitter, they may block using Facebook. So how they can do that? They can either do one thing, they can block port 80 or port 443. So if they block port 80 using firewall or block their port 443, so what happens will, any like we can visit website on two ports, that is port 80 and port 443. If we are using a HTTP page or the website, we are using port 80, and if we are visiting HTTPS, we are going through port 443. So if an organization wants that no employee can visit any website, they can block port 80 and port 443. If they block their ports, these two ports, so any data packet that will be coming through this port will be dropped because these two ports are closed. But there is a problem with this kind of idea, because if they are blocking port 80 and port 443, what happens is the employees will not be able to visit any web page, because all the web page in the world runs on these two different ports. So what we have is we have different types of firewalls. So the next generation firewalls can work up to application layer. So we have read about the OSI layer. So generally the previously used firewalls work work at network level, and hardly before network layer they can interact with hardly the session layer, the transport layer, sorry, the transport layer, network and the transport layer. But these next generation firewalls, they can differentiate between websites, they can work at application layer. So if an organization wants to block Facebook, they can explicitly block Facebook. So the main use of firewall is to prevent the organization from unauthorized data sharing. So firewalls are a set of tools that monitors the flow of traffic between networks. Okay, so let's suppose there is a sales team, there is some other different teams, and if sales team is sending some data packet to some other team, so that everything that happens inside the organization can be monitored. Okay, so this team is sending this to this team is sending this to this, and this is done within the network. And to prevent anything from outside the network, it just looks and identifies the packet, what's happening and what's coming inside, what's going outside. So the firewalls generally filter traffic based on four different things. The first is behavior based. What is behavior based? So let's suppose there is a sales team, and the average data usage of a sales team is like 1.8 GBs every day. So there is a sales team, there in sales team there are 5 persons, and the average usage of that sales team in past 1 year is 1.8 GBs every day. But let's suppose there is sudden increase in their data usage. Let's suppose the team started using 5 GBs of data every day. So the firewall knows, okay, so this team is doing something that is not based upon their behavior, they are changing their behavior. So the firewall will inform the admin, okay, so this team is doing something out of their behavior. There can be policy violation. Let's suppose there is a guy who is authorized to send mails to everyone, but he cannot send mail to the admin to ask for permission. And let's suppose that guy is sending mail to the admin. So this comes under policy violation, like this guy cannot send a mail to admin. So these all things can be separately monitored by firewalls. Then there comes signature based. What are signature based? They're attack or signatures or virus signatures. So when a virus or when a malware or when anything is created, they have a different signature. So all the attacks that has already happened, the firewall has the database of signatures of all the previous viruses and malwares, and those things are in the database. And every data packet that goes through the firewall actively monitors, okay, if this matches with the signature. If this matches with the signature, the firewall will drop that packet, inform the admin. And if the packet does not match with the virus signatures, it will keep passing them. Third thing is anomaly based. Anomaly based means learning normal and seeing a deviation. What is learning normal? This is machine learning based model. So the firewall learns what is normal for the organization. So what can be normal? Let's suppose the admin comes at 10 every day. His time is to come at 10 every day and use the internet. He does this thing. He only opens one website. He has to work only on that website. So the firewall understands, okay, so the admin's normal condition is he will come at 10, he will visit these websites. But let's suppose again what happens is admin comes after 7 p.m. after his working hour and starts using some different websites. So this is something, a deviation from normal. Like, why would anyone come and work even after their work has ended? Like if someone is working from 9 to 5 generally, but suddenly they start working from 9 to 5 and then again they start working from 7 to 8. This means that that guy is doing something abnormal. He might be sending some data, he might be stealing some data, he might be sending something to some other server. So this is how firewall detects based on their normal. Firewall understands the normal, and if it sees a deviation, it informs the admin. And the last thing is heuristic based. Heuristic based means based upon their algorithms. So every organization works differently. Every organization has their own methodologies to work. So they create their own algorithm. Okay, so their sales team will be working like this team will be like their email team, their drafting team, they all will be working like this. So if there is any difference in their working or their interaction with the net, their interaction with the outside world, so the firewall will know. So this is how happens. An algorithm is customized based upon their organization. And the last thing is the components of firewall. Sorry. So there are two components of firewall, IDS and IPS. So IPS is intrusion detection system and IPS is intrusion prevention system. So intrusion detection system, what it does is it just detects, okay, if there is something abnormal, it will detect the abnormal and it will inform the admin. That's all. It just monitors everything passively. It never comes in between those data packets. It stays inside and just keep watching all the data packets. But what an IPS does is, if an IPS sees that anything is abnormal, it terminates the connection and informs the admin. So the IPS, this process is little slow. Because why this process is little slow? This monitors every packet actively. It sees every packet, it sees if it is normal or not. If it is normal, it will let it pass. If it is not normal, it will drop it. But IDS will just look, just monitor, and if anything abnormal detects, it will inform the admin. So IPS is little slow, IDS is a little faster, but a better solution is IPS. Okay, so these are the advantages and disadvantages of firewalls, and I think I have already discussed everything. You can just give them a look after the session, you can just give them a read and you will understand everything. These are just some points of advantages and disadvantages. And then we come to encryption. So what an encryption is, hiding a plain text data as a ciphertext using a key is called encryption. So let's suppose you want to send your password to your friend. Like you are sitting, if you are inside a class, you are sitting on the first bench and your friend is sitting on the last bench, and your friend asks कि भाई तेरा Facebook का password क्या है. So do you think like you can give your Facebook का password easily? You will speak, my Facebook का password is my name @123. No. So you both need to understand a same cipher language so that you can send your password. My password is XYZ23, and that guy, your friend, understands, acha, this guy's password is this. So you are sending some random text which is cipher text, and then that can be decrypted to get the original message or the original plain text. Okay, so there are different types of encryption. The first one is symmetric encryption. So what symmetric encryption is, it uses same key for encryption and decryption. Okay, so let's suppose you have a lock. So if you have a lock at your home, you can lock that lock using the same key and you can unlock that using the same key. This is symmetric encryption. So if you are making a cipher text out of a plain text using some algorithms, you can use that same algorithm to decrypt that. But in asymmetric encryption, the case is different. You encrypt, you create cipher text using a different key and then different algorithm, and then when you want to decrypt that, you work with different key, you work with different algorithm. So asymmetric is little slow because we need two different keys and two different times to first we need to encrypt that with a different key, then we need to decrypt that different key. But symmetric is simple because we need a simple key, a single key, to encrypt the same thing. And what hybrid encryption is, where we use both symmetric and asymmetric encryption combined together. Okay, so let's discuss this with example. Sorry. So mm, so let's suppose that you want to send something to your friend. Okay, you have something, you have an information, you have a message, and you want it to send it to your friend. Okay, so you keep that text, you keep that message inside a box, inside a lock, or inside a VIP suitcase, whatever, and you lock it and you send the box to your friend. But your friend needs to have that key to open that, because it will open with the same key. So you need to send the same key to your friend. Okay, so now let's think with like digital world. I have a PC, I have a laptop, and there is one friend who has a laptop too. I am sending some encrypted text message to him, and he received the encrypted text message. If in between there is some guy who gets the message, so will he be able to read that? No, because why? Because that message will be encrypted. But even my friend won't be able to read that, because that message is encrypted. So even my friend needs that key. So if I send my key using the same connection, isn't it possible that the guy who just got the message may get the key also? So he can decrypt easily and he can get the message. So this is where asymmetric encryption takes place, comes in play. So in asymmetric encryption, there are two keys. There is a public key, there is a private key. So public key is used to encrypt the message. A public key is shared publicly, and that can only be used to encrypt message. So if some guy who is actively monitoring your traffic, if he gets that key, it won't matter any much, because with that key he only can do is he can encrypt, he cannot decrypt. So but if then we have a private key, and private key is used to decrypt the message. So what happens is, there is a guy A and there is a guy B. Guy A has his passwords, his key, public and private key. Guy B has his public and private key. So what guy A will do, guy A will encrypt the message with B's public key and send the message. And when B wants to send something to A, B will encrypt with A's public key, so that when the message receives at the A's end, A can decrypt with his private key. So this process is more secure but a little slow. Okay, so and hybrid encryption is used where we share the symmetric key using asymmetric method, and then we share the data using symmetric encryption. Okay, so when we are sharing our key, for key sharing we use asymmetric encryption, like we encrypt the key with B's public key, and then B can get the key using his B's private key, and then we can initiate the connection. We can share data, encrypted data, using using symmetric encryption method with the same key. So like we are done for today. So do you have any questions, anyone, regarding this? Hello, if anyone has any question, like he can speak and say. So how does A get B's key? Okay, so there are two person. Okay, Ram and Shyam. Okay, Ram has two keys, public and private key. Shyam has two key, public and private key. Okay, so they both have a public key, they both have a private key. They won't share private key to anyone. Why? Because the private key will be used to decrypt any message. But they can share their public key, because public key is only used for encrypting a message. So what Ram will do, Ram will tell कि मेरा public key ये है. So Shyam knows कि Ram's public key is this. If Shyam wants to send anything, he will encrypt using Ram's public key and send it to Ram, and Ram will easily decrypt using his private key. If Ram wants to send something to Shyam, he will use Syam's public key to encrypt so that Syam can decrypt using his private key, and nobody will share their private key, only they will only share their public key so that other party can just encrypt the message, and when they need to decrypt it they will decrypt it using their private key. So in hybrid encryption, what we do is we share the symmetric encryption's key using asymmetric method. Okay, so let's suppose कि I am sending the key to my friend, okay, and I am afraid कि anyone will see my key and then he can replicate my key, he can have a duplicate key. So what I will do is I will lock the key in a suitcase with my friend's key, like I will lock with my friend's key and I will send it to my friend, and then he can open with his key, his private key. I will lock with my friend's public key, and I will send the original, the symmetric encryption key to my friend, and he will do, he will use his private key to get the symmetric key. And when we both have the symmetric key, we can use the symmetric encryption method, which is faster to share encrypted data. Okay, is everything clear now? Hello?